Man, I
Ooh.
got sleep in my eye. Okay. Yeah, we are live, buddy. So, whenever
Okay.
you're ready.
Whoa. Hey, they're watching us. They're looking at us. It's like they're in our rooms hanging out with us. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Take a deep breath and we get back on. 4001. Let's do it. Welcome back, everybody. Can't stop, won't stop. And football world doesn't stop. So this is Sigmund Bloom. You were expecting to hear Cecil Lammey. You will in a moment. We're going to go over the Senior Bowl recap as Cecil went there on our behalf. But before we get into that, I want to say the big game is here. Kansas City versus Tampa Bay. New customers can play free for $1 million dollars with their first deposit thanks to our partnership with DraftKings. Create your DraftKings DFS account and make a deposit. DraftKings will credit your account with a free contest entry, draft your lineup, and compete for the $1 million top prize and tip your bartender. Go to dkng.co/big game to play. That's dkng.co/big game. Enter now, like right now, well, when the show's over. Offer ends on February 7th at kickoff. Let's kick off this show, Cecil.
Mm.
No longer doing the North and the South. You remember the blue-gray game? uh, National and American. I guess we're doing baseball. Another baseball reference.
Right.
National quarterbacks, this is kind of the best of the rest. I mean, we're going to have the top four quarterbacks that are dominating the conversation, but we also have some quarterbacks, some developmental types. Sam Ehlinger from Texas, Ian Book from Notre Dame, and Felipe Franks from Arkansas. What did you think of those national quarterbacks?
Yeah, none of them can play. I mean, with Ian Book, and there's one quarterback from this game. We'll talk about him in the next team. But with Ian Book, you saw that at least he was consistent with his efforts. It seemed like his passes didn't really have a direction at times. Some inconsistent throws. I felt bad for the wide receivers, although we got to see them make high degree of difficulty catches. Ellinger was probably the worst quarterback there. Felipe Franks wasn't much better. And again, it's just basic accuracy. Like mechanically, they're fine. They're good enough. Book's okay enough. You did see at times during like 7-on-7 drills where Book could take off to run, which is never what you want to see, right? You want to see at least a guy try to make a throw or make a throw on time. Seemed like the processor speed was slow on Felipe Frank. So, some tools I could talk about, but really it was watching the other positions because as soon as you showed up, and I knew that neither one of these three were going to be that great. I mean, all late round undrafted prospects, but you want to see what kind of stuff they have. Like, is there something that intrigues you? There's a guy on the other team that is a late round pick that we will talk about at quarterback that is interesting, that set out due to COVID this year. But these three, I would say Book was probably the most interesting because of his athletic profile. But, Franks, Ellinger, they didn't do anything to impress during the week. And, it showed up pretty quick. Like, it wasn't one of those things where it's the first day and it's rough and everybody's rough and then they get better as the week goes on. No, they were about the same each and every day. I was watching Book closely. My partner at night, Nick Ferguson, here on the fan, loves Ian Book. Not exactly sure why. Because, again, late round prospect, backup caliber quarterback. I would rather just have a team look in a different direction. If you're looking for any sort of developmental or if you're talking dynasty, anything like that, not real interested. But what I saw from those three QBs in the week at Mobile.
You teased it. See, so on the American side, you teased it. Some names here: Kellen Mond, A&M, Kyle Trask from Florida, Mac Jones from Alabama. I mean, those Alabama players. Well, I don't know this year with no crowds, but certainly Mac Jones. Raise some eyebrows, at least with his production. But the quarterback you referred to, Jamie Newman, who was going to play for Georgia, Wake Forest product, a graduate transfer that never really came to fruition as he opted out before the season. So this was his first chance to get on a field and impress the NFL in this cycle.
Right, in this cycle. And he's the guy that you would look at and say, okay, late round guy, but something's there, right? And it comes down to me for processor speed because you have, and let's say watching Felipe Franks, you would drop back. He'd hit his back foot. You're supposed to fire, and he'd wait. And he'd probably wait another beat, and then he'd go to throw, and by that time the coverage was there. So you could tell there's these break points, not only within the route, but also within the footwork of the quarterbacks. And what you saw with Newman is that he would hit it and he would throw it. Now, it wasn't always good, and it was inconsistent, right? I actually did a video for Broncos.com, and they ended up, this part hit the cutting room floor because Newman's kind of getting some like late round buzz and upside and blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, no, it's not there in terms of consistency. Could it be there? Sure. Mechanically, is he sound enough? Yeah, I didn't see any issues with that. I liked his processor speed. That was interesting to see. And he was the only one outside of Mac Jones. Trask was hurt, a little ankle thing, so you did not get to see him. People have talked about him as one of those, mid-round quarterbacks or even second-round quarterbacks. We'll see, the pro days that we get, Bloom. I'm not exactly clear. I've asked some people. I think I even talked to our friend Matt Miller about it, and I was like, so are there pro days or not? And like, there's pro days, and you can go to them if you kind of know people. So anyway, I don't know if I'm going to any pro days this year. Probably not. But anyway, so you look at what Newman could be. That's fine, but he's still a late round quarterback. But there is something there exciting, and it comes down to how quickly he can read things. Mac Jones is the first round quarterback that you saw. And it was, last year I saw Justin Herbert, Jordan Love at this game, Steven Montez, Jalen Hurts were at this game as well. And what you saw with Herbert is like every day he's just clearly the best. There's no question. And he was somewhat robotic. He was Justin Herbert, right? That's what he is. But as we saw, you program that robot right, it can be pretty good, really fun, exciting. You saw the same thing from Jones, and I don't even have to say processor. Everybody knows that short intermediate stuff, he works that. His pass placement is uncanny. I must have written that in my notes like 3 times. Like, it's just uncanny the way he can put a ball in place for his receivers to maximize yards after the catch. He did throw one pick on the third day that was like on a screen, I believe. Try to get it over the defender, LSU linebacker. Top of my head, I got to remember who it was, but he just skied. He made this amazing athletic play. So other than that, Jones didn't really make any boneheaded plays, and he will set up to take those shots downfield. It's not his game. It's not where you want to put him in a 3-vert system. Let's say like Pat Shurmur. All 32 teams talked to Mac Jones, including the Denver Broncos. I've had people ask me like, the Broncos take him at 9. Like, that's too rich for my blood. I see him more as a late round, first round quarterback. So let's say you get to 28 to 32, somewhere in there. That's where you're thinking about Mac Jones. Now he'll probably go higher, because of that, the high football intelligence, that quick release, quick processor, and he's smart and accurate. And damn it, Bloom, we've been trying to figure out this quarterback thing for years and years and years, right? Yeah. So is the NFL. Nobody's figured it out. But I always come back to this, like with Teddy Bridgewater. If you're smart and accurate, I can work with that. If you're smart and accurate, you can play a long time with that. Like, maybe you're not the most toolsy and you're not the most mobile, because I think you need mobile quarterbacks in today's NFL, not athletic, but mobile quarterbacks. And then, I mean, if you have those tools, that's fine. But if you can start with smart and accurate, that can take you a long way. So in the right system, a Saints system, a Patriot system, Patriots at 15 would make a lot of sense for Mac Jones. And he went out there and he didn't really dazzle. He was clearly the best. And that's where I had to kind of adjust how I was looking at Mac Jones every day, because he was so good, but everyone else was so bad, right, and so inconsistent. So it's like, okay, how do you weigh that, right? Like last year, Justin Herbert was clearly better, but you saw Jordan Love had the talent. And man, he tried to make throws. He just wasn't connecting on them. I thought Steven Montez had a good year last year. So like with Mac Jones, it's like he was so far above everyone else because everyone else can't really play. But Mac Jones showing off that first round pedigree, there is no doubt he is a first round quarterback. And in the right system, Patriots, Saints, something like that, to take advantage of his quick, intermediate, short routes, taking some deep shots from time to time, I think it could work out really well for him in the pro level.
It's more of a Thursday night kind of conversation. See, I've watched Mac Jones. I wouldn't spend a first round pick on him. I think the NFL might get it right too. My only problem with Mac Jones, and this is something that, and I think you outlined really well why this was a big week for Mac Jones, because he should have stood out among this group. And, and there's a lack of marquee talent at any of the fantasy positions. So the players who did come to this game should have stood out if they were players that we were considering. And you really highlighted his strengths well, but he's a within structure quarterback. Like if the play's working, he's going to make the play work. And especially as you said on those in breaking routes, short routes to set up yak, like you just picture Devontae Smith like zooming up the field. That's Mac Jones setting up. That's a lot of his yardage. When the play's outside of structure, Mac Jones is, well, he's Andy Dalton. Like throw the ball away, live to fight another day. But in a Senior Bowl practice, that's not really going to show up as much. Let's talk about who showed up at running back for the national side, and a couple of guys. And again, Najee Harris didn't play, pulled out. So a chance for someone like Michael Carter to stand out. And then a lot of buzz about Demetric Felton, not as a running back, but as a receiver.
Right. I talked to James Palmer from NFL Network, and he was not down in Mobile, but he's got plenty of friends, probably DJ. And we were separated. The Senior Bowl did a really good job. First, it's in a new facility because Lad Peebles was falling apart. That Bloom, as many times as we'd been to Lad Peebles, is like, okay, this is a crappy stadium.
It was quaint, rustic.
Yes, and awful. But the field was tore up. So the new stadium at University of South Alabama, magnificent, just beautiful turf, beautiful stand situations. But the NFL and the GMs and the scouts were on the one side, and then the media was on the other side, all socially distanced, whatever. So I didn't get to see DJ because there wasn't even interaction between the people that were there to like broadcast the game, like even a Todd McShay, and then us regular media types, right? So you go out at night, you're not intermingling with all those people like you used to. I'm not going to watch Jack Del Rio grind on some chunky intern, on the dance floor. That you didn't see that this year. So, I'm talking to James Palmer, who probably got his information from DJ, if I were to guess. He was really trying to pick my brain about, tell me about Demetric Felton. I was like, well, as a weapon, Isaiah McKenzie type, that's what I saw from Felton because they used him mostly as a receiver.
Yeah.
Most drills, he was working as a receiver and, he was good. The receivers here, though, were really good. So, it's not like he could stand out because he's a running back. So you look at him, they weren't putting him, and there's no pushing the pile really, even though 9-on-7, there's no live tackling to the ground. But you can just tell, like, he's not built for pushing the pile, but he's very quick, electric underneath. There'll be some role for him, but it will be strictly in that get him in space, use him as some sort of weapon. No, I don't want to say full time. It doesn't even make sense to say that. That's just not his game. So he was a standout mostly as a receiver. Michael Carter, explosive every time he was touching the ball, right? You could see his foot frequency bloom, very powerful stride, a powerful gait, if you will, and someone who could just eat up those chunk yards, right? Big play, caught the ball well. He cannot pass protect at all. His pass protection was very poor during the week of practice. Now, I think maybe the want to is there. Like, it's difficult to gauge. I'll talk about Khalil Herbert in a little bit, but you can tell do they need technique work or do they need, want to? That's what and I can't answer that right now about Michael Carter. Just know that he was regularly getting abused, whether it was a bull rush, whether it was speed rushes. Like he had no shot. He had no shot. You might as well had one of those, what are those wind socks, right? At the airport, which way the wind's blowing. That'd have a better chance of stopping you than Michael Carter in pass protection. So for all the great things, and even in the game, right? When, how much does the game matter? But Michael Carter showed really well in the assets where he's not asked to protect the passer, which then limits what he could do because you're not going to trust him to protect the QB. So he can make plays in space. He can be a good receiving option. But if you can't trust him on third downs, you're not going to put him on the field. So interesting. We'll see if Pass Pro develops as a runner receiver. There's certainly enough skill, enough natural ability there to make you curious, right? Mid-round pick, fourth round, what have you. Ramondre Stevenson, and I was talking to Matt Miller about this too. I was like, yeah, I thought he was a fullback, right? And then now there was people like, there were people like pumping him up. It almost reminded me of like the Logan Thomas when I saw him throwing passes in the dirt, and you'd watch Twitter on the sidelines in Mobile. It's like, this is Logan Thomas, he's the greatest passer ever. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? So the Ramondre Stevenson stuff, it's like, okay, I see, and I love big backs, right? So I'm watching him closely. I'm like, he doesn't have the juice. If there was a little Tyrone Moss here, Bloom, if we could pour out one for our man Tyrone, well, my man Tyrone Moss, where like you see the natural instincts, but there's just not enough juice. What was our man X-Man for the Bills?
Xavier Omon.
Xavier Omon. Yeah. So remember when we saw Xavier Omon, that was like Texas Nation, and you're like, this guy's really natural. He's really instinctive. He's just not fast or quick enough. And maybe Stevenson will change my mind. You know, maybe he's got a little bit of extra juice, but he's not the receiver out of the backfield. So he's limited in what he'll do at the pro level. And then if he doesn't have enough juice, it doesn't matter if he's as natural and instinctive as can be, like, man, whatever. Najee Harris was there. He wasn't practicing, as you mentioned. My God, does he look like, you know, Derrick Henry? Does he look like just from a physical standpoint, standing next to the other backs? And I know some of these backs are smaller guys, but just Najee Harris looked like Josh Jacobs. He looked like an Alabama running back, right? So unfortunately, didn't get to see him perform. Khalil Herbert's my favorite back. He's my favorite back. I'll be talking about him a lot leading up to the draft, after the draft, wherever he lands. And he's going to be like a late round, mid round type of guy, 4th, 5th round, 6th round, whatever. But what he does, runner, explosive, makes defenders look silly, receiver, catches the ball cleanly, naturally, knows how to turn up field quickly. He can stack moves. So when he'll meet a defender, he'll make a move. If that move doesn't work, he's already got a second one dialed up. So it's almost like he's predicting in a matrix type of way, like, I'm going to do this, which makes you do this, which means I'm going to do this. And he stacks them so quickly. Great footwork, great return, man. His pass protection, I think technique-wise, he could use a little work, Bloom, but you saw that want to. Like Michael Carter was getting embarrassed in pass protection, right? Every time. I mean, I almost stopped writing notes about it because it's just like, oh God, here, this guy's going to win, right? Herbert, at least you saw that effort. Like he fought hard. He did get bull rush one time, top of my head. I guess I have my notebook right here. I could just look at it. But anyway, like for the most part, I loved his effort. I think his technique could use a little bit of work, but that's going to get him on the field. So like if you said Khalil Herbert and Michael Carter were pretty much equal in terms of what they did as runners and receivers, and that's fairly accurate. I like Herbert a little bit more. But if you say now, you know, the next part, who's pass protecting better? Well, Herbert's going to get on the field before Carter. So Carter can have the buzz and the hype and the big plays and the big game and blah, blah. Yeah, he's not protecting the quarterback. Doesn't matter. Herbert showed a little bit better. We'll watch these two with great intent in this class of running backs.
Yeah, backs on backers in those all-star game practices.
Love it.
It's great because they're naked. I mean, they're out there for the whole world to see.
That's right.
And you really get an idea of who has a zest for it. And that is something you can extrapolate into other parts of their game. On the American side, leading the way, and again, we get into the idea of 2020 was a season like no other. Kylan Hill opted out in the middle of the season. Mike Leach, I guess, Mississippi State, didn't really completely agree with him. So he's kind of on a redemption tour. How did the first stop of the redemption tour go for him? And what about the rest of these American side running backs?
Yeah, and I forgot to ask our dear friend Tony Pauline, and I'm just glad Tony likes me because years ago we were at like Frankie's or something on the west side in New York City. Bloom, I sound like I know where I'm at, but anyway, so it was me, Russ Landy, Tony. I think that was it. And, you know, I'm drinking some cold pops. I got a big mouth. I'm, you know, just being obnoxious as I used to be. I've calmed down in my old age, Bloom. You know, I was like, man, I hope I didn't, you know, I didn't look like an ass to Tony Pauline. But anyway, Tony and I are good. I forgot to ask him about Kylan Hill and what exactly happened, because there was, I mean, the buzz or the reports or whatever, like, okay, there was a team suspension and then he quit. Okay, you know, because Mike Leach is running his way, and there was kind of an exodus there for Mississippi State players. What was it, Bloom? Like 7 players? I don't know off the top of my head what it was, but including Hill, that just kind of left the program. Now, going into this, you know, he's probably, outside of Najee Harris, the most physically gifted runner at this game. and you saw it. You saw it showing up. You saw that physical ability. You saw the power within his stride. You saw the quickness within his decisions. I love Khalil Herbert on the other side, but Kylan Hill was the guy that I watched on this side, and he was clearly the standout player with that explosive playmaking ability that you could see as a receiver as well. Chris Evans, Elijah Mitchell, they were good too. Evans, I called Captain Michigan. Because of course Chris Evans is Captain America. So, and you saw that intent. Like, he's a hard charger. He's not going to say no to working inside. He doesn't look to take things to the corner store like Matt Waldman always says. So I like seeing that from Chris Evans. I think there might be some limitations to what he does at the pro level, because again, when you're watching Kylan Hill and you're watching Michael Carter and you're watching Khalil Herbert, and they just have this extra gear. And then you watch Chris Evans and he doesn't have that. You're like, oh, okay. And that's the great thing. Like, people say, oh, it's practice. What do you get from practice? Because you see the players doing the same thing. Yeah. These are the same players doing the same drills. And then you can immediately identify Evans doesn't have that juice like Hill does. And this is on the same team. If you go to the morning, you could say, well, Evans doesn't have that juice like Herbert does or Carter does. So that's what's the great thing about these practices. And then I look at Elijah Mitchell. I was talking to my man Brandon Stokely about him. Of course, Raging Cajuns, what's up? And he does have juice. He doesn't have any control. So that's the problem. And so, like, he's got this electric part to his game. And unlike a Herbert or even a Carter, as I mentioned, where you can stack moves, it's almost like a pass rusher, Bloom, right? You know, where you got to be able to stack. You can have one move. Oh, you're going to swim move. Well, where's the rip? You know, where's the hump? Where's the bull rush? Where's all these different moves that you need to be able to stack? As a running back, it's the same thing. Can you create your own space? So Mitchell, when he's in space, is like, oh my God, look at this footwork and electric. But when he's not, when he has to create his own space, which is a highlight for running backs, when he has to create his own space, that's when his brain kind of, because his body is so athletic. And then his brain is like, it kind of short circuits a little bit.
Smoke comes out of his ears, I think the scouts like to say.
Yeah. So with Mitchell, you can see the tools. You just go, how do I get his brain to catch up to what his body can do? Because what his body can do is amazing from the running back position. So an interesting group of running backs here. I thought Hill, and I went in excited about Hill, which I always got to kind of watch myself. You know what I mean? Like when you go in, I was excited, let's say last year for Michael Pittman at this game, right? And then I was so disappointed. And so I had to gauge, like, okay, film will always tell you what happened. And then when Pittman like wasn't ripping passes away and stuff, that was like, oh man, because I wanted to see that. Hill, I was excited for. He backed up that excitement. So take that for whatever it's worth. I'm missing out on Larry Roundtree here, who did flash from time to time. He's your standard Mizzou running back, Bloom. Like, how many guys can I go over? And the Broncos just signed one, I think, or maybe they just cut him, an old Missouri running back. And it's like, oh, there's another. It's a Mizzou back. So you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a hard-charging guy who never does anything in the pros. Maybe Roundtree will be different. But out of these players that I was watching on this team, he's probably the one I took the notes on the least, which, again, you can't watch everything, but that's how my notebook went during the day.
Yeah, some really good stuff taking me back down memory lane about all-star games. I think it also applies to the combine drills too, that what you see, it isn't about getting nitpicky on the details. It's like you said, you see the fluidity or lack thereof. You see flexibility or lack thereof. You see explosiveness or lack thereof when you're watching the players do the same thing one after another. And it was always great too to see sometimes a player could look really good, say in wide receiver on cornerback drill or backs on backers drill against one player, but maybe somebody who has a different style or different game could really flummox them in the pit too. And you start to understand, okay, this is the kind of player that's going to give this player trouble. This is the kind of player that's going to give them an advantage. So there's always a lot to learn. Always a lot to learn about the wide receivers. And again, Devontae Smith not there. You don't have to measure up to Jamar Chase. You don't have to measure up to Jalen Waddle. A chance to stand out for some of these guys. And it seemed like during the week they were taking turns. Des Fitzpatrick, Dwayne Eskridge, Tylan Wallace, Sage Surratt. Like these guys all took turns on our timelines. For those of us that weren't there, you were there. What'd you see?
Yeah, what I saw was some really good wide receiver play and some interesting wide receiver play there as well. And it's something where I thought, to me, and it's kind of like, what do you go in expecting, and then do they check the box, or do they make you go back and want to watch some more, right? Do they make you think I missed something? When I hear about Sage Surratt and people are like, oh, he doesn't get separation. Did you watch him? Like, did you watch him on film? Because there were people, kind of reporting like, oh, Sage Surratt, he's struggling at the Senior Bowl. Hey, that's not his game. His game is to win contested catches. That's what he does. That's having those ball skills that he showed during practice at the Senior Bowl. So, it's kind of at times, Bloom, I wonder if some of these people like see these players for the first time and like Sage Surratt can't separate. He didn't do that in college.
Right.
Like,
Kenny Golladay can't separate.
Exactly. Like, does he have ball skills? The answer is yes. It would have been nice to see Devontae Smith do something. He refused to get weighed in, Bloom.
Yeah.
It's always very, very interesting.
It's an aside, Cecil, it's the draft, right? And we can go back to when we were pounding the pavement on the draft circuit together. I think that it's come full fruition that agents want to control everything they can. Mm-hmm. And the higher the status of a player, the more they can control.
Yes.
And I can't remember anybody off the top of my head whose draft stock was hurt because they said, I'm going to dictate the terms of when I reveal or share something about myself.
NFL rattles their sabers over stuff like that. Yeah, but
they never actually do anything.
And they never do anything. Yeah. Leonard Fournette didn't play in his bowl game, Christian McCaffrey didn't play in his bowl game. Rattle sabers, don't do anything. So maybe that's what you'll get with Devontae Smith. It was cool to see him there. It would have been nice to see that speed on the field, but with these wide receivers and everyone that plays fantasy football, and whether it's dynasty or season long, you're going to want to know these guys. And some of the names that I'll mention, I'll get to them. Ben Swarnick, I don't know. Notre Dame kid, he didn't stand out. Desmond Fitzpatrick, maybe like one day was a standout player. I really want to talk about Dwayne Eskridge. I really want to talk about Cade Johnson. I really want to talk about Frank Darby. Frank Darby might have been the best player there, even better than Mac Jones. Now, this is during the week of practice, right? So, if you talk about a flawless performance on a daily basis, and as you know, because, who was the New Hampshire wide receiver?
David Ball.
Why can't I remember David Ball? So, David Ball, we get there at the Shrine Game, it's like, oh my God. And then the rest of the week, he doesn't do anything. Right. So with Frank Darby, it was like, oh my God. Look at what this guy's doing with his body control, with his routes. He's talking trash, like in a big way, because he's making every play. Like whether a cornerback's all over him or not, Frank Darby was out there being a consistent big play target for his quarterback. And so I was like, okay, well, let's see if he can do it Tuesday. Then he did it Tuesday. And I was like, okay, make a note of that. Now, can he do it Wednesday? He did it all 3 days. And so it was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Sorry, because practice begins on Tuesday. But either way, Frank Darby was one of my favorite players to watch down there. One of the most fun players to watch down there, because of what he can do before the route and after the route. Like it's in the catching parts, and there's no problem. It's like he had magnets on his hands. So Frank Darby, wherever he goes, mid rounds, what have you, like someone's going to get a player there and a playmaker that worked well against tight coverage and off coverage. I mean, he's just destroying them. He's destroying people. Nico Collins, knows how to use his frame. It wasn't much there. Tylan Wallace, not as much there. I want to talk about Dwayne Eskridge because second to Frank Darby is probably the most impressive receiver here. I'll talk about Shi Smith on the other side, but Dwayne Eskridge, in terms of body control, in terms of setting up defenders, high pointing passes, he did all these things naturally. And Western Michigan, Bloom. Yeah. We've talked about Western Michigan receivers before, Central Michigan receivers before. Like Dwayne Eskridge is a name to know. He's a player that will make it in the NFL because he just naturally knows how to take the ball away from you and set things up. Speaking of setting things up, Cade Johnson, I compared him to Miles Morales, everybody's new Spider-Man, because that's what he was doing. And he was, again, one of those guys that was there every day, not as good as Frank Darby. There were a couple of drops from Cade Johnson, just basically, a concentration issue where he's thinking about running after the catch because he gets open so easily. It's fluid, it's effortless. And anytime you see a South Dakota State jackrabbit, baby, and you see these small school guys that get that chance and then perform incredibly well against the best players they've ever faced, like that's that's a shot in the arm, right? That's a boost. And it's fun to watch these guys really kind of take this opportunity and know what they have with it, right? Because they don't have that big, they don't have the Wolverine logo on on the side of their helmet, right? They don't have that big Alabama. They don't have that number on the side of their helmet. No, they have to make it when people don't think they can play at this level. And Cade Johnson, selection process for the Senior Bowl has always been strong, relatively, Bloom. And the small school selection, like if they select you from a small school, you can play. Cade Johnson certainly back that up.
Yeah, I think that's another thing, as you said, and we're doing a show about this, so we're not trying to downplay the importance of the Senior Bowl, but don't count it twice, right? For a lot of players, they show up and exhibit what they've exhibited already against top-level competition. But for small school players, it's very important. The Senior Bowl can really move the needle on their draft stock. I always remember Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. It can show that, yes, you do belong. Kadarius Toney, we go over to the American side. Kadarius Toney obviously belongs in the NFL, but this was an opportunity for him to show he belongs in the first round. He needed to stand out. So this was a little different than the small schooler where Toney, and there's going to be some questions about maybe off-field stuff, but this was a chance for him to stand out in a way that could really get teams excited about him. Also, when we look at the American side, we got Clemson receivers. Always we have Clemson receivers.
Yeah.
Amari Rogers stealing some headlines there. Who got the headlines for you on the American side?
Yeah, and Toney makes it look easy, and just his movement and his athletic ability with it, he makes it look easy. And there were times where he seemed to shy away a little bit. There were some, as the days went on, and you felt the pressure, Bloom, like this year. And I was texting with some scouting buddies, like on their side, they were feeling pressure because this is it. This is the only thing you have.
Right.
So as practice went on, like Wednesday got a little chippy, right? So when you watch Toney out there, it's like, man, he didn't really respond to the chippiness. Frank Darby, don't even try with that guy, right? Because he's going to put it in your face. With Toney, you saw not necessarily some timidness or whatever, but maybe you wanted to see more of a reaction. And, I know some people maybe, I don't want my guys doing that. They're going to personal foul penalty or whatever. But like, it seemed like Toney didn't like that the way that others like a Darby liked that. And Eskridge liked that, where it's like, oh no, you're not going to do that to me. You're not going to do that to me. Shi Smith, he was that guy on this side. And probably the most reliable receiver outside of Darby, in my opinion, in terms of like the coverage didn't matter. The player didn't matter. The size didn't matter. The pass interference didn't matter. They had officials there, I believe, on Wednesday and Thursday. And really, it's one thing I noted about Cade Johnson. I didn't say it on the show, but I noted it on Twitter. Like, even through pass interference, Cade Johnson was making plays. And you can't mess with Shi Smith. So he was that guy where if you would have saw a little bit more of that from Toney, and these are the two players to really concentrate on. Right. Unfortunately, the Clemson guys didn't stand out for me as much as maybe they did for others. But Shi Smith, Kadarius Toney, those are the two guys to concentrate on. So if you took some of what Smith does in terms of, don't back down isms and gave that to Toney, then you'd be even more excited. It's not like Toney did anything to take himself out of the top round, what have you. But yeah, I wanted to see a little bit more of that excitement about being out there. I saw Marquez Stevenson, the kid from Houston, stood out. Racey McMath, not necessarily on this one. Just thinking back, again, I should have my notes in front of me. I didn't take many notes on Austin Watkins, honestly. Josh Palmer's like your traditional Tennessee receiver where he's technically sound, maybe not as quick or fast as you would need him to be in and out of his breaks. But again, technique wise, there's something there. Solid base, solid backup, special teams guy there. But it was Toney, it was Smith. Those were the two that stood out for me on this side of the field.
We round out with tight ends on the national side. Toney, maybe some raw materials to work with here. Guys like Tony Poljan, Kenny Yeboah, who scored in the game. Does the game matter? He scored in the game, had a nice celebration. Hunter Long, how about the tight ends?
Yeah, Yaboa was interesting because you see the physicalness of this kid. Like Hunter Long, let's get it out of the way. Like he's your Y, he's your standard. He's good at blocking and he'll get open against a linebacker and it'll be tight, but he'll make the catch. He won't do much with it. Yaboa was the one that you're like, oh, there's some receiver. There's
Yeah,
like
he was
some
a
big
former wide
play.
receiver. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're watching and you're going, oh, come on. Like there's, the physical side of it where guys like Hunter Long and the other side probably had the best tight end. I'll get to in a little bit. But with Yaboa, you wanted a little bit more of that physicality. Does the NFL care about that? Do fantasy GMs care about that? Probably not as much as they used to. But you saw he's not the complete package. He's more of the athletic receiver type. What was it, Jordan Cameron that I saw with Julius Thomas back in the day? So I had memories of those guys. And if I'm having memories of those guys, Bloom, that's a pretty good memory to have when you talk about Kenny Yeboah. So he's the most exciting one here. The Virginia kid, I didn't take a whole lot of notes on. Again, more of your standard Y. So Long was solid, not spectacular. Yeboah was the guy to watch. But the physicalness, the nastiness, if you will, wasn't there. Probably will never be there. But you definitely saw that stride, the ease in getting open. That's what made him stand out in receiving drills.
Jordan Cameron was going to be a player if he didn't have all those concussions.
He was.
Wasn't he and Cameron Jordan in the same draft? Weren't they in the same draft?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, because there's all that talk about.
That was Julius Thomas's draft.
Yeah, don't draft the wrong Cameron Jordan Cameron.
Cameron Jordan.
Yeah. All right. Rounding it out here. Doing our lap around Senior Bowl rosters with the fantasy focus tight ends on the American side. Noah Gray, maybe leading away Trey McKitty. What did you see in this tight end group?
Yeah, in this tight end group with Gray there, that's the more complete package. And a guy, you see a Duke helmet, you're like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing that now. But you saw him show that blend, right? Where Long, it was like, okay, I know who he is. With Gray, you saw a blend, and you're like, oh, there's a little bit more athleticism there than you would think. The physicalness was there in his play, catching passes cleanly. That was always good there. To me, was it Kylan Granson, the SMU kid, showed well. And then McKitty. I liked what I saw from Trey McKitty in addition to what I saw from Noah Gray. But Gray, to me, just in terms of all around, if you're not looking for all around, then Yeboah was the guy, right? There's no question he was the man. But if you're looking for all around and have a little bit more upside, then to me, that was Noah Gray this week in Mobile. Tight ends, this is not the tight end class you're looking for, except at the top. But there are some interesting names here a little bit later, and that's where Gray's going to be, in my opinion.
As we put a bow on this one, impressions, because it was, again, a season like no other. A Senior Bowl like no other.
Right.
I think for a long time there was a question of whether the Senior Bowl was even going to happen.
There was a question of whether it should happen.
Right.
The Shrine game canceled, the NFLPA game canceled. So a lot of people are like, what are they doing? Like, why are you doing this?
They sent fewer personnel, right, than usual.
They were limited to 9, I believe.
Yeah, and so the Senior Bowl also is a place where a lot of business happens, a lot of talk happens, maybe diminished a bit. What were your overall impressions returning to Mobile for yet another year?
Oh, I don't want to make you sad, but I went to Saucy Q. Well, that makes me happy. But I went to Saucy Q and the lovely co-owner, I believe.
Yeah,
she said because they moved it from Lad Peebles, like nobody comes over there because there was a half-hour break between practices, right? And the second practice, Matt Rule runs a horrible practice, like terrible practice, just boring, awful, does special teams like 3-4 times. I'm not kidding. So I told Luke, who was my travel partner, Luke Patterson from Mile High Huddle, I said, yeah, let's go to Saucy Q because we can miss the first half hour of Matt Rule's practice. It doesn't even matter. Even one of the security guys said that when he was like, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter. So drive to Saucy Q and drive back. That just took an hour because Mobile traffic is stupid. It's not that far technically, but the traffic lights in Mobile are stupid. Like there's all these there's frontage roads and blah, 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 like terrible drivers, people staring at their phone. But it made me sad when she's like, nobody comes here because it's not at Lad Peoples anymore. Because Saucy Q used to be like hey, there's Eric Studesville, right? hey, there's Marvin Lewis. Hey, whatever. Like, and it wasn't that this year. So anyway, besides the food impressions, which are always delicious in Mobile,
Mm-hmm.
I felt safe. I think that was important. I thought that they did a good job in their, if you're going to practice, mandatory you're masking up, mandatory that you're socially distant. Now, the people that you traveled with, generally, that's who people were sitting around. There wasn't a lot of intermingling. There was some, but it felt good to be out there in this way. I believe there was one positive test, right, on the players' side during the week. I believe Jim Nagy might have tweeted that out. Excuse me. And Nagy taking over for Phil Savage, because Phil Savage really made strides with this game and even wanted to go further, but ran into the ceiling that is Mobile. Like, Phil Savage wanted to make this game even larger, but Mobile, was a little slow. Let's slow down here. And honestly, it should be in Houston. As much as I love the draft starts in Mobile, well, the draft should start in Houston because it'd be better. And you'd have a more international airport. You'd have easier travel. You'd have a better facility. Even though USA was like fantastic, the first day there was an email that's like, hey, we're not having practice. Sorry, nobody can go. But we're going to have the film for you. The film wasn't up until like 10 p.m., by the way. But so the first day, I was like, damn it. And you saw the weather report. There was a tornado when it ran through. But you saw the weather report and you're like, we're not going to get to watch practice this entire week. Now, the film is good enough for me and being there and all that kind of stuff, like the whatever is whatever. But like, I felt bad for my guy Luke because it was his first Senior Bowl and he wasn't going to get to experience any of that. Well, the weather cleared up and then they never emailed people that practice was actually on. Nagy tweeted about it like 20 minutes before practice started. Well, guess who's staying 20 minutes away from USA? Yours truly. So like, and thank God for some reason, I just happened to check Twitter and I saw that. So I was like, boom, let's go, because we'd already packed up for the day. So I think there's some administrative things for this game that could be cleaned up. It's unpopular to say, but the Shrine games run better. It just is. Like, you show up, I went to get our badges at the Senior Bowl. It's like, can I have a roster, please? And they're like, oh, we don't have any. And then one of the workers was like, oh, well, we emailed that to you. And I was like, I'm a physical copy guy. So I'll show you right here my physical copy of the Senior Bowl roster that I ended up getting just from some guy that was there in the media. Like, hey, can I have one of those? But like, if you go to the Shrine game, and it sounds stupid because it's something little, but if you go to the Shrine game, they have a stack of these. And every day, they make roster changes and they'll tell you like, hey, there's a new guy and here's the new roster. As you walk in, they do that. So it's a little bit more scout friendly. I thought what Rule was able to do, like if I'm a scout, I'm complaining to Matt Nagy and saying, don't let Matt Rule come to this game again, because you're not getting anything scout wise. Like, Matt Rule's trying to win the game. You saw with Brian Flores, he was trying to show off the players. Like, this is a showcase. If I was an agent, I would be pissed, because if you're on Matt Rule's team, because you're out there, like, let's punt team, and they're going up against the big bouncy balls and stuff like that. It's like, doesn't show me anything. Like, give me the drills, give me the one-on-ones. That's what you saw from Brian Flores. Great practice, great energy. Rule was out there cussing at guys. I went back and forth with Shoddy, because Shoddy was like, oh, the Rule practice, such energy. I was like, energy? They were doing special teams like 3 times. Like, Matt Rule himself had energy because he's out there cussing at guys. But Flores had actual energy within the process, and that was more enjoyable to watch. My notebook was much more full on Brian Flores' team than it was on Matt Rule's team. So I think there's some more things the Senior Bowl can do. New facility was great, but the weather in Mobile is almost always bad. Almost always bad. Every year there's some sort of threat, and I do feel bad. This is my 15th year, Bloom. So if I didn't see one single practice and I had to watch it all on film, I wouldn't really care. Even though I traveled to Mobile and blah, 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 I still wouldn't care. But for the people that, it's their first time, or they're trying to break in or whatever, and there's a lot of networking there, like actual social networking, even though we were socially distanced, whatever. So I felt good about their policies. Let's just say this: people in Florida and Alabama maybe don't think about wearing masks or socially distancing as much as other places. That's just my observations. Whatever your opinion is whatever is your opinion, but everyone be neighborly, all that kind of good stuff. So it was interesting when you were away from the facility, when you were away from the hotel, you're like, oh, they don't give a sorry Joe around here. Like, oh, okay, that's weird. That's different from what you see, let's just say, in Colorado. But so overall in this situation, I thought that they pulled it off, man. They pulled it off. Didn't know if they were going to do it, but they did it, and it was good to see. It was good to be there. I'm very glad that I went. I had no concerns beforehand. I know everything that's going on. I know how to react properly to everything that's going on. For me personally, I had no and again, this gets into a larger conversation. I got friends who are afraid to leave the house. I got a buddy of mine who's crying before he goes to the grocery store, and I'm not making fun of him. I'm just saying, like, that's how some people are so concerned about this, and I feel for them. For me personally, nah. I think you guys thought I was crazy when we were talking about it on one of the Thursday night shows, Bloom, like after the show, and Matt's like, I'm not going, and I was like, oh, I'm going. I didn't see any issue with it if things were done the right way, and things were done the right way. So I feel good about that. And they were very strict about that. Again, so there wasn't any intermingling like with scouts and you're rubbing elbows and there's Romeo Cornell on the elevator. None of that. So it was a different experience, but it was so small, Bloom. It felt like the old times.
Yeah.
It felt like when Scott Reynolds, Jim Wyatt, is that right? Because Jim left.
Jim Wyatt.
Jim left the Pewter Report, but and I don't think I saw Scott this year. But anyway, it felt like the old times before. And even Matt Miller and I were talking at draft picks or whatever that place is called. Like, Matt Waldman and I started hiding mainly because of Matt. I'm not here to be like, look at me, but like so many people were coming up to Matt, and God bless them all, right? God bless everybody. Hey, I'm Matt. I love your work. And hey, man, I'm trying to get in. And hey, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's cool. Matt and I had to start hiding because we're there to watch practice. Talk to us at Saucy Q. Talk to us at, later on. Matt and Dr. Gene don't go to the bar. And I don't really go to the bars that much. I'll check in a little bit. But anyway, so Bloom, it felt really good because there was a more serious tone. Because if you were there, if you, risked your health to go, you were there for business. You weren't there to tell Dick Cheney jokes and play grab ass. And too many times in the Senior Bowl has gotten so big because here's the secret. If you want to go to the Senior Bowl, they'll credential you because they credential anybody. Draftfrommymomsbasement.com. You got a badge. It doesn't matter. And that's fine. And they do it for Mobile. Mobile gets so much money. And that's what I felt bad when, I'm like, is the Brick Pit still open? Because I want these places to be open. Like, is Via Amelia's? That's in somebody's house in Mobile. It's a fantastic Italian restaurant. Like, are they still open? All of this impact that we've had financially, especially the restaurants, especially the small businesses, all of these things, I didn't want to see that gone. I didn't want to see some of my favorite places boarded up because they couldn't make it. And Saucy Q's barely getting by, dude. They're open from 10 to 3. Right? Instead of being open all day. So like, it's something like, okay, everyone out there, support your small businesses as best you can, do all those sorts of good things and be neighborly and all that kind of stuff. But they were able to do it. They were able to pull it off. And, I'm happy that I went.
Yeah, you should represent. And no one's going to ever be worse at All-Star game practices than Howard Schnellenberger. He was the worst.
He was the worst.
I was like, oh, it's Schnellenberger practice. I need to go to the bathroom. Do I leave
do I need
car?
anything? Yeah. Can I take a walk around the stadium?
Exactly. It's too cold to stand here and watch nothing.
Except watch out when you're in El Paso because your cell phone would pick up the Mexican towers because you're right there. You could literally from the stadium see Juarez.
Yeah, you can see Juarez and get charged for international roaming if you didn't turn that off. Exactly. Right. Watch out, folks. Watch out always for draft season. It's back. Matt Waldman's in the bunker for the RSP, but when he emerges like Punxsutawney Phil, we will have him. We'll talk draft a lot over the next couple of months and many other things like coaching changes coming up next. So if you're here with us live, stick around, or if you're just hearing this, check your podcast feed for our coaching carousel show. Now, there's still a few more of those little horses that need to be jumped on, but enough to talk about, and then some around the NFL. And we haven't even talked about the Super Bowl. It's coming up tomorrow, our Super Bowl preview. Thank you, folks. Thank you, everyone. By the way, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for the turnout for our 4,000th. I can't even say it. I'm getting verklempt. Our 4,000th show yesterday, especially all of our great guests. It was a sentimental walk down memory lane, and we'll continue to create memories because the NFL continues to create memories for us. As always, stay classy.